Hi there, and welcome back to the channel. So it's been a minute since I've made a video. I've been super busy working, but I have been able to get in here and clean up these bass tracks. And I was going to just show the audience what I do as far as post-production, which is very minimal nowadays. Always has been, but it's really minimal now, mainly because the number one thing to do is to make sure that your mic technique and your recording sounds good. You have a good strong signal that doesn't peak. And that is powerful. It's the worst thing is when you look at the sound wave and the signal looks really puny. You know, not enough signal to noise ratio there. As soon as you start escalating in volume, you know, lifting and amplifying that volume, you're going to introduce all that noise that's sitting around it too. So you want to get that nice recording. You want to have a nice, you know, sound wave when you're done with no peaking, because digital distortion does not sound good. There's nothing you can do with it. Like I had sounded like an electric live wire running through a bass part. So when I did this bass part, I made extra sure if I saw that peak light come on at any point, I kept rolling gain back. Because I had it on unity gain. I had it at 100 as far as the strip goes. But all the added gain from the pre, I just kept rolling it back until I saw nothing as far as like distortion. And then when I got in here tonight, I listened to it, you know, again, just to make sure, isolated, completely isolated, and made sure there wasn't a single bit of that nasty distortion, because it would have, you know, trashed the part, at least that little moment. And after listening to the part, I don't really hear anything that makes me want to redo it or start patchworking it. There's a couple moments where maybe it's not as much gusto as another moment, but within the mix of the tune, it sounds great. It's actually one of my better recordings as far as bass goes. I do direct, but it just sounds really rich and full. And I like the part. It's like the part filled in the gaps, and it actually, I don't know, it provided some weird glue. It really did do some good things, and I don't usually count on a part to like fix another part. But there was a moment where the guitars and drums felt slightly off in the second chorus, and something about that bass part just sort of made it sound okay. I don't know why, and I'm not even going to try to figure it out, because I'm just happy that it feels like it's gone now, and I don't want to, you know, find it and start freaking out, you know, and obsessing on it. Okay, so mainly the whole idea of the Zoom, you know, is to be out of the computer and doing your thing here, kind of like the old 4-track days, or if you ever get to go to a big studio and do some fun stuff there, you know, they have the board and everything, and that's what I like about it, having these faders, and it's like hands-on, and there's just something. It almost feels like I'm not recording if I'm going into a computer. I don't know why. It's my own hang-up. I guess because I came from 2-inch tape at studios, and then 1/2-inch 8-track tape was what I was doing before I got into the Zoom. The reason I got out of that is because prosumer decks suck. Like the Tascam and the Otari, and I know they can sound good and everything, but ultimately you get kind of mid-grade tone if you can keep the things running. I mean, you really need to know how to work on them and have all the parts available if you want to fool with them, because they just break constantly. They weren't made to last. They were built, you know, 80s, and they're prosumer, especially the Tascam stuff. The Otari you can go places with, but Tascam, I don't think so. Not those open reel decks. And we, at one point, we had a studio that had a 16-track version that was, you know, better machine, but that's not where they excel. MCI or Studer for tape machines. Okay, so the other thing that I do is do just a quick cleanup, like I said, because the whole point of not doing the computer is to not do the computer, right? And there's not much I don't want to change things. I don't do any EQ or any of that kind of stuff. And I use Audacity, which is a free program, and I've got it down to a couple, you know, quick steps. So I'll talk you through, you know, what I do and how to, you know, connect it or whatever. So you need to use the cable that it comes with, because it has one end is different from the usual USB ending. It's got this like kind of proprietary end. I don't know if it's proprietary to them, but it seems like a lot of electronics use this kind of funky end. And then the other end's the old school USB. And on the new Macs, you need an adapter for this. This is an old Mac that I just left up here because it can do little things like this, you know, with a Blom. whereas that way I don't have to go back and forth with the new laptop and risk dropping it or whatever. So anyway, you connect here with the cable. You go from here to the laptop or the computer or whatever, and then when you see the little icon pop up, I'll click on that, and then you're going to scroll through and look for the correct project. And I've got mine named. It's Exciter, but I've got it kind of some funny letters because there's not enough character spaces for the full title. So I'm going to click on the Exciter, and then when I go in there, I usually click on audio and open that as a folder just to make it easier and cleaner, because if you drag stuff in and it doesn't go in that folder, it'll just stick it somewhere else and it won't be where it's supposed to be. So I usually double click on that audio just to open that up and avoid confusion. Now, I'll find, usually it's the last thing I did, which was mono 015. It's nice to know that going in because it sucks to search, especially if you're going back and doing stuff later and you don't remember which one it is. It really is a pain to go back and find those. In this case it was 015, so I dragged that into Audacity, and once Audacity opens I can see that the signal is nice. It's a nice, good looking bass signal. Everything is fine as far as that goes. And like I said, I don't do much anymore. So what I'll usually do is go over to classic filters, and I was cutting, down pretty low, but nowadays I like to leave as much signal as possible. So I'm actually just barely cutting anything off. It's like 5 dB, just a little to just get rid of anything, that might be making noise that I don't want to have, build up on the track over the course of recording other things that contain bass. And then I'm going to go check the amplify after I do a little bit of that classic filter cleanup. I'm going to check the amplify and just see how much I could push it. And I decided to only do 2 dB because it looks pretty loud, and it was the bass was loud. But I have noticed that with a lot of things with the Zoom, it's a little underpowered. So you'll get tracks that just kind of sound like they're lacking oomph. And the way I get around that is so I've titled this Bass Left, because I'm going to just make a quick copy. Once I load this in, let it do its thing, then I'm going to retitle it Bass Right, drag that baby back in, and now I've got 2 bass tracks. So once I drag it in and it's done its, had enough time to get into the track, because this is an old computer and the Zoom is kind of slow and all that. Once everything's loaded, then it's important to eject it the correct way. So I usually hit Control on a Mac, but you can just drag it to the trash or however you do it on a PC. But you want to drag it to a trash and make sure it's cleared, off the computer before you hit Exit on the Zoom. And it'll say, "Are you sure?" or whatever, and you say yes. Let it go. Remove the cable. Now we're going to go into the machine and hit Track. And I'm going to put this on 7 and 8 because it's 2 bass signals, and I think 5 and 6 with the guitar, so it'll just sit next to there. No, I'm sorry, I'm going to put it on 9 and 10 because 7 and 8 still have guide tracks and stuff on them, and I'm not sure what they are and don't feel like looking. So I'll just put it on 9 and 10 for now. Always easy to swap tracks, no big deal. Got the swap feature. I end up with bass a lot of times on 9 and 10, so I'll just start by putting it there. So I'm going to move it over to 9, and then in that position right now is a new track. I'm going to replace it by going through and finding that bass left. Once you find it, you hit Enter. It's now sitting on 9. Go to the next one. Look for bass right. That's going to be I'm going to move over and go to 10. I'm going to look for bass right, put that one on left and right, and then I can go to Pan EQ and do like a 50-50 split. And you can always experiment with this or just leave it at 100 on both ways, but it seems to, for whatever reason, feel like it fills up, in a stereo kind of way, stereo split kind of feel way. And it depends on what you're going for, but I like the feeling of the bass kind of spreading out to left and right. Now bass is kind of weird because no matter where it is, your perception of it will always be that it's basically in the center of the room. But I do find that splitting it like that and controlling it somewhat still makes it sound bigger, richer. But supposedly with a subwoofer, like when you're doing a hi-fi, tuning your room or whatever, the sub can sit anywhere. I used to always like to have 2 subwoofers, like as a pair when I was doing hi-fi. Luckily I just moved my attention to recording music and got out of that obsessive thing. But when I was doing hi-fi, I did a lot of experimentation with low bass, and it seems to be hard for the ear to locate where it's coming from. So just mess around with that pan EQ and see what you think. But let's now, with it in here, I'm going to move it over to mastering mode, and we'll give it its best shot at a playback for an audience. You won't be able to hear the stereo split thing because it's going to just be coming through that one, mono speaker, that one mono coaxial speaker that's in this PV-KB3. It's a keyboard amp. Don't recommend it. It's very underpowered. Okay, so whenever I go to mastering mode, the first move I'm going to make is pull this red fader basically all the way down. Then I'm going to go to effect. Once I get to effect, right now it's sitting on bass. I'm going to move it over to mastering. And I've shown this a lot. So in the input screen says master, that's what you want it to be. And then when I go to edit, I'm going to, I don't know, it doesn't matter so much. The highs don't matter right now, but I'll set everything to 5, 5, 5. The lows are super high on that EQ, on that compressor. So I'll go 5, 5, 5. High will be 5. Mids will be 5. This is just setting it up for the overall track. The bass, we won't need all that. Gain, I'm going to put that at 0 on the normalizer. The 3-band EQ, I'll just go 5, 5, 5 for now. That can always be adjusted. Okay, the dimension reso's off. Patch level's 24, ZNR is off. I always turn off all noise reduction type stuff. Okay, so it won't blow our ears off because it's a bass drum. It's a bass signal. So let me turn off everything else. Okay, so I'll turn that off. That was the original bass. We don't need that because we've assigned it. And then I'll just turn off all this. I don't think any of this is active anyway, and the drums are off. So we'll be listening to the 2 tracks of bass that are on 9 and 10 with it in mastering mode. Let's see what happens here. Whoops, I did not connect this cable. So coming out, and I use the left one whenever it's mono. I'll just go left out to that there. Let's see if we get some signal this time. Yeah. Good signal. Good loud, tight signal. A lot of good sound, like this, the string noise, and it's played with gusto. Those attack, bum bum. That's gonna be great with those drums. this part. It's gonna be good. Almost over. Okay, and it ends abruptly, so that's that. No note decay. Okay, I'll document everything I did here, including, I'll document real quick how to get into this mastering thing, even though I've done that a bunch of times. It's just a pain for people to go back and find it, and there's no telling what it's like to search this page. I don't even know what happens if you do that. Who knows? Probably you should organize things better for people. But anyway, hopefully that helped as far as like what I do. I think the only thing that I might be doing that is unusual is the doubling. And the only reason I'm doing that is not to do anything but to get more power. And I guess I'm pretty loud type of operation here, so you might not need it if you're doing something more quiet, like a singer-songwriter, like a jazzy thing, or something quiet, acoustic. That may not be necessary, but you might find that you're not going for loud, you're just going for present, you know, and it feels like weak and meek unless you double some of this stuff, and I'm definitely not going for that. I'm not always going for the loudest or the heaviest, but I'm going for the most right, and you need that slam, you know. Okay, so this begins the really intimidating part, getting the vocals together. This isn't hard to sing, like it's not a big deal, but I have a choice of to sing it really high at the beginning or like a half step down or something, and I'm just not sure which way I'm going to go. But once I get this microphone set up, that's what I can do for the rest of the evening. I'll be able to kind of ascertain what it's going to sound like, because I definitely don't want to make a weird move that makes the song weird, and then I start getting comments from people like, that vocal sounds weird. Not that I care what people think, you got to just do your own thing, but I just want to get on the right path, because a lot of times what people say lines up with what I'm feeling too. It's like a confirmation, so it's not so much that I'm doing what people say, it's that I'm agreeing with them because it's sort of obvious to anyone who hears it. All right, next time. I had, before I pack up, I had one little anecdote I wanted to share. Since the passing of Richard Lewis, the comedian, died a couple of weeks ago, I guess it was, and I was just really bummed out because I had a minor brush or interaction with him once at a Lou Reed concert. So this was the second time I lived in Los Angeles. I lived out there 3 different times, and this time I lived in Van Nuys and would have to drive all the way over to Pico on the west side to get to work. So we would drive up the hill. Robert, my friend, and I would drive up the hill, either Mulholland, Laurel Canyon, Coldwater Canyon, take your pick of the canyons, go up, and then all the way down. And it was a long drive, so I'd usually have some kind of, you know, album on, like a long record. I remember I got really into the Beatles' White Album during that time period, and I just bought 2 cassettes. One was Daydream Nation by Sonic Youth, and the other was the New York album by Lou Reed. And I had only heard by Lou Reed the Transformer record, and I loved the song Satellite of Love. I saw that on a PBS, it was called Sound Stages, I think. Man, that's a great concert. You ever look that one up? The Lou Reed Sound Stage with Fred Marr on drums. And what's his name? I'm forgetting his name. He was in Richard Hell's band. Robert Quine? Yeah. Man, whew, that concert. Incredible. Short too, really good. His version of Satellite of Love is my favorite. It's better than the album. It's just more down to earth. Awesome. So anyway, the record really just had captured my imagination. I'd love to write an album that heavy one day. It's like 14 songs or something. And it's just mind-boggling. Not that I agree with everything on it. You know, he had his way of saying his thing or whatever. But so anyway, the concert was for that, and it was a big deal for me to see this. And he played the entire album all the way through. Took a break, came out and did a greatest hit. So it was incredible. But when I got to the show, we were standing in a beer line, and I actually saw Joshua, I'm forgetting his last name. He's in River's Edge, Fright Night 2. I mainly knew him, he's Tony in River's Edge. But anyway, he was dressed, he had super long hair, dressed in head to toe black like leather, and I remember he had a cane that had a skull on the top of it, like a chrome, plated skull. It's pretty awesome. I think it was. I mean, I could be mistaken, but I remember him walking by with that. I think he was wearing a cape. He was wearing a cape. Yeah, man, that was a hell of a sighting. Tony from River's Edge wearing a cape and a cane. That was awesome. So anyway, standing in the beer line, I happened to notice this guy, and he had really good hair. And I was thinking, who is that guy? He looks familiar, like a TV person. He had unusually good hair, for an actor on the street. A lot of times they're wearing wigs. So anyway, I'm staring and looking at him like, I recognize this guy. And Robert knew him and may have said something to him. Somebody in the crowd, in the beer line, said something to him. And he starts talking and is just immediately like super funny and engaging and warm and awesome to everyone. Didn't do like the celebrity thing. Immediately went into like a routine. And I can't remember what it was about, but it was hilarious and everybody was laughing. It had something to do with beer, because it's back when I still drank beer, and we were like in this beer line, and it was something about beer, but it was just hilarious. Everybody was laughing, and we all just left the experience thinking that Richard Lewis was super cool. So after that, anytime I saw him in anything, Curb Your Enthusiasm, he had a series, I never watched it, in the maybe 80s, early 90s with Jamie Lee Curtis. Every show back in those days was about like somebody working at like an ad agency. It always was like that. It's like, who are these people even real humans? But anyway, he was on that show and some other stuff. But he's incredible. Stand-up is great. Look it up. It's good stuff. And maybe that was some stand-up that he had done before. I don't know. But he was just cool and engaging and friendly with everyone. So it left a really good memory at the Lou Reed Show. So rest in peace, Richard Lewis, and it's always neat to be able to tell people that somebody was awesome, and he was an awesome dude. Next time.